Nooruddin Zengi, to me, is one of the greatest heroes in all of Islam because I loved his style, the way he did things, and he came up in such a time of chaos, very similar to our times. He came up in a time where the Crusaders, as Habib is going to put it up there, right? The Crusaders had taken over 4 major cities, okay, including Jerusalem, Edessa, Antioch. Okay, they've taken over 4 major cities along the coast of Shem. And the Muslims themselves were so pathetic, so pitiful at that time, that the majority of their rulers were drunkards, people who drank, people who were inept, people who were incompetent, and people who would gladly side with the Crusaders against one another. They would attack one another, they were fighting one another, and they were Ubad ad-Dunya, they were worshippers of Dunya. Amongst them came up a gangster. This gangster's name is Imad ad-Din Zengi. He's a Turk. Right? Imad ad-Din Zengi is a Turk who is somebody who was extremely competent. Pious? No, not pious at all. Not even close to pious. Okay? Not close to pious at all. But was he competent? Very competent. Okay? And he had a philosophy that was very interesting for us to learn. His philosophy was the concept and the idea that in chaos, you must remain on the attack, or else you will be attacked. Okay? That was the philosophy. Okay? Don't put it in the corner, go down to 3rd corner, no. Keep clicking those scenes, and there's a scene where it's set for you. On the left. On the left. Yeah. There's a scene. Yeah, there. Imitate that. Stick it up there. Okay. Imad ad-Din had a saying. There can only be one tyrant at one time. There's ever only one tyrant at one time. Meaning, if I'm the tyrant, there will not be another tyrant. And he was a man who cannot be described by any means as pious. But he can very well be described as a king who you're not going to want him as your king, right? But if he is your king, you will not have problems. This is a man who kept no word. He had no word. He was purely, the idea with him was the ends justify the means. I'll give you an example. He wanted to conquer. All he did, he spent his life. This is Game of Thrones stuff. Okay, this is total Game of Thrones stuff. And Habib's going to put up a map right now of the countries we're talking about and of the cities of Jerusalem. Cities of Shem that we're talking about. And I'd like to give you an overview and the general themes here. I don't go into the details like some of these history podcasts. There are some history podcasts that go into such detail. I wonder, do you have a life? Seriously, such detail that is, the listeners, no way. Like, you guys ever heard of the Hardcore History Podcast? There is no way a human being can actually keep touch with the amount of details. Keep that in your mind. Amount of details that this guy gives in the Hardcore History Podcast. So I don't listen to it. It's too much detail. Give me the general idea and the important themes that go through it. And the theme of Imad ad-Din Zengi's rule was that in a state of chaos, okay, being constantly on the attack is the only way to survive. And he survived. Not a lot of people survived at that time. Rulers were up and down. It was completely like there was no stability at all. The Latin kingdom, which is the Crusader kingdom, they had stability, but nobody else, except Imad ad-Din Zengi. Now, how did he come up? Imad ad-Din Zengi came up. His dad betrayed his king, so he was beheaded. So when you come up, when you're 10 years old, and your dad gets beheaded, what kind of view of the world do you have? That's the first thing. So whatever happens to people in their youth, it's oftentimes, it amplifies as an adult, because that's something that's his norm, that's his life, right? So that's the first thing that happened to him that was like left a mark. He was then raised by a general that is not his father, is not going to have the same kind of tender sympathy for him and care about he has a nice childhood. He raised him on militaristically. He raised him militaristically. And that's how they operated. Okay. So when it came time for Ahmed ad-Din to rule, he ruled, and he was on the trying to take Damascus. That was his thing his entire life. Let me give you an example of what kind of betrayer this person was. He wanted to take over Aleppo at one time, Halab, which he successfully did. He besieged it. When he besieged it and he couldn't succeed, he gave a promise to the leader, all of you come out, let's sign a pact. Okay? All of the captives that we have, they took captives, because some people live outside the city walls. We'll hand them over to you. But I need to talk to the leader face to face. They made him swear on the Quran. They made him swear that he would divorce all his wives. He did all that. They brought the shuyukh to arbitrate. Now, mind you, he's attacking Muslims. Most of his career is attacking Muslims. As soon as the leader comes out to sign this pact, what does he do? Slits his head, slits his neck, cuts his head off, kills all the captives, takes over the city. He's a man that had zero principles, except the principle of the ends justify the means. Now, you look at this type of person, and you ask yourself a very simple question. Why is it that Allah Ta'ala gives success to this person? Because by all measures, he was successful. Okay? He was extremely successful as a worldly king. How did he end up getting killed? He ended up getting killed because he was drunk. And a slave drank from his cup. So he pronounced a death penalty tomorrow on this slave. So the slave is afraid. It's a Christian slave. So in the middle of the night, he killed him. That's how he died. All right? To show you that it wasn't really exactly what we call a noble death. But his achievements are two in his life. Are two main achievements in his life. Number one, he was the only stable kingdom in that world. And it was strong. And by conquering multiple cities, the trade increased and improved. The tijara. And they became rich. Now the third thing, or the second major contribution, actually had nothing to do with Islam and the deen and the motives of Islam. Had purely to do with the motives of dunya, as was his track record. How could we say that? How can we judge the motive of another guy? Look at the guy's track record, right? Look at how the guy lives. The guy's a drunk. The guy is... can you stick the other one on, actually? To give you... Sorry for the hassle. But the one that has all the Crusader towns in it. The guy's motive not once showed any respect for the word of Allah. But he does something at the end of his life that triggers some belief in the hearts of Muslims. And what was that belief? He conquers a major castle, a major city and citadel and fortress and stronghold of the Crusaders, which is Edessa. When he conquers Edessa, it all of a sudden gives the Muslims some heart. And he's thinking, the Muslims realize, we beat these guys. And you don't understand the cowering, the cowardice, the fear that the Crusaders put into the heart of Muslims. And it was, what's his face? What's the guy's name? One of the first biographers of the Crusades. And I like to get it from the Christian perspective, because when the Christians say something about their own events, right, then it tells you something. What's his name? He's one of the major early authors, and of course they try to rebut him because he, by essentially telling the truth, he ends up saying a lot of nice things about the Muslims. Stanley Lane Poole is his name. And of course all the modern historians, they want to debunk him because to justify their job, basically, essentially, they need to come up with some new idea. And this guy's giving the Muslims too much credit, blah, 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 blah. So Stanley Lane Poole, okay, Hamza Hussein, we're not talking about Nooruddin. We're talking about Imad-ad-Din, his father. Okay. All of this, we're talking about Imad-ad-Din, not Nooruddin, the father of Nooruddin. Imad-ad-Din, you ask yourself, and I brought up the question, well, you ask yourself, why does Allah give this tyrant such success? It's because Allah Ta'ala is using him to lay the foundation for somebody else. And that is Nooruddin Zengi, right? So Imad-ad-Din is your typical gangster. What's going on?
That file's too big.
File's too big? Screenshot it. Yeah, screenshot the important part of it that has the Latin kingdom in it. Yeah, all that. And then actually minimize a little bit, click like Control minus, so the screen shrinks, and then screenshot that. So, Plan C says hopefully he's a Hanafi. This guy's barely a Muslim. Imad-ad-Din, yeah, he's a Muslim, of course, but when he tried to take over Damascus, what did the ruler of Damascus do? He sent an emissary to the Crusaders themselves for help against Imad-ad-Din. So Imad-ad-Din's goal was to rule over Mosul, which is in Iraq, Halab, Edessa, and Damascus. If he could get these four corners, he could make like a shape, okay? And that would be his territory. Now let's ask a question. Where is the link? There is a link here between Nooruddin's family and the future Salahuddin's family. We're not even close to Salahuddin yet. He's not even born yet. Imad-ad-Din Zengi, he's an opportunist. Any chance he could attack, he attacks. So the Khalifa dies in Baghdad. At this point, the Khalifa of Baghdad is nothing other than a figurehead, right? He's nothing other than a figurehead. He dies, but he has an army. And the sons are thinking of who's going to be the next Khalifa. What does Imad-ad-Din do? He has the gall to take over the Khilafah. And he tries, but he fails. He tries to go up to Iraq, Baghdad. He's in Mosul. He goes up to Baghdad. And he tries to take over Baghdad. Take over the Khilafah itself. Firstly, how did he even become a governor of Mosul? Because the Khalifa Mahmud, I think is like Mahmud II, at the time he was young. And he had a civil war within, the caliphs had a civil war within, and he banked on the right guy. That's what he did. He basically bet on the right guy, and he supported the young Khalifa. He wins the civil war, and as a reward, he gives him Mosul. That's how Imad-ad-Din becomes the Khalifa. So when that man, his ally in Iraq, Baghdad, the Khalifa, dies, Imad ad-Din goes to try to take over the whole thing. But he fails. And he's actually on the run, and they almost killed him. While he's on the run, shortly, a little bit outside of Baghdad, what happens? Another wily politician, okay? Another wily politician, all right? We need to minimize it a bit more to get Jerusalem, right? Yeah. Who's this wily politician? Ayyub Najmuddin. Ayyub ibn Shadi. Okay. Hey, Noah, are you here? What number should I click? We got a lot going on the stream. Are you on the stream, Noah? Tell me what number should I click here. Ayyub ibn Shadi, all right, is the governor in Tikrit, a little suburb. It's a little suburb. What does he do? He sees the possibility, right, of what could happen here. And he gives him refuge. What does he see? He sees that this is a powerful guy who has a future. He's a powerful guy with a future. He gives him refuge. Okay? He gives him refuge. And when he gives him refuge, later on, that they become allies. Okay? We still don't have Jerusalem in that. Zoom out even more. So this guy is completely, these are all resourceful, opportunistic people. And these two people, Ayyub ibn Najmuddin, Ayyub ibn Shadi, who is that? That's the father of Salahuddin. That's the future father of Salahuddin. So who rises out of chaos? This is what's important, not all these details, right? The idea, the theme. Who rises out of chaos? The guys who are resourceful and they're always on the attack and they're making the ally allegiances that they need to make. Okay? That's what's important. That's what matters. So that's how Ayyub ibn Shadi, okay, becomes allied with Imad ad-Din as Zengi. That's how they become friends. Later on, as a gift, Imad ad-Din gives Ayyub the city of Baalbek. And that's where the city of Baalbek is where Salahuddin is born. Baalbek is a nice, posh, cushy city in Sham. And Salahuddin grows up in absolute peace in that city. Okay. Salahuddin grows up and he becomes later on a soldier and a prince. Okay. So Imad ad-Din, when he conquers Edessa, now where is Edessa? Imagine Turkey. To the right of that is Edessa. That's where Edessa is, the northernmost of the four principalities. Edessa, Antioch, Tripoli, which is now Lebanon, and Jerusalem. So, and when we say this, and Habib is about to put it up right now, he's got the map. When we say that it's a principality, what does it mean? It means the city is the main thing that they control. There's a bunch of farms and no man's land around it, but they end up managing to, so they benefit from the farms around it. Okay, it's not like today where when you control something, you control every inch of it. Like France controls every inch of France. You can't, go build a house somewhere in a country today and disappear off the grid. I mean, it rarely happens. It's almost impossible to happen. But in the old days, they used to do that. So the Crusades are now after Edessa, the conquest of Edessa. What did Imad do? He initiated again the fire of the Crusades, which led to the Second Crusade. Second Crusade, to take back Edessa. And that crusade is a failure, right? It fails. Yeah, here, come take my phones if you need to do the login. The Crusaders, they end up ruling for 88 years total. When they ruled, the Muslims were in complete, I would say, disobedience outside of Islam, you know, not outside of Islam, but outside of what is needed to gain victory. In sins, in ma'asi. And Stanley Lane Poole is the one who said that when the Christians came in and went right to the heart of Jerusalem, the horses on the way to Masjid Omar were knee deep in blood. It's Stanley Lane Poole who came up with that, and people repeat that after. It's like a vivid image of how much killing they did. All this was actually spurred by Peter the Hermit. Peter the Hermit. He is one of the preachers of Christianity, and he's the one who actually came up with the vision. Now you wonder where this massive thing called the Crusades came from. It was born in the mind, and we would say that Allah put His will, here it is, in the mind of a certain preacher who, when we say Allah's will is of the good and the bad, right? But when it comes down to the earth, it has to come somewhere. Came into this mind of Peter the Hermit. He went around Europe preaching, and he could fill a field with people to preach. All right? He could fill the field. So Peter the Hermit did this, and it caught on, right? And he doesn't realize what he lit. The flame that he lit was a fire that would take over the entire Islamic world, Sham, for over a century. But if you want the summary, there are 13 crusades, some big, some small. The Crusaders won the first one. They lost all the rest. Right? There are a lot of crusades. Some of them are insignificant. Okay. And the Muslims themselves, out of Iraq, there were preachers, and there were khatibs, and there were imams, and some of them stand out over others, okay, that inspired the Muslims to return to jihad after the conquest of Edessa, which was not even done in the name of jihad. It was done in the name of dunya. But when they conquered it, when Ahmad ad-Din conquered Edessa, they got like, whoa, we could win here. Now, Nooruddin as Zengi is the son of Ahmad ad-Din. When Ahmad ad-Din comes in, dies, he divides up his kingdom. Salam right. He gives Halab to Nooruddin. And he gives Mosul to his other son, Saifuddin. Nooruddin is literally described as one of the awliya Allah. Ibn al-Athir says, I have studied the careers of the rulers of the past, and I've only found 5 rulers of greater piety than Nooruddin. In other words, the 4 Khalifas. Of course, Sayyidina Hassan is a Khalifa, but he doesn't rule for long. And Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. There can only be 5 people who are mentioned to be close to the taqwa and deen of Nooruddin. Now, the Western historians, they want to remember the economics of academia. Economics always play a great role in everything. Economics of academia is not just about telling the truth and just about seeing what's going on in the world. Academia is also, you need to get a job. You need to get attention. Someone's got to pay you. Don't underestimate the role of having to be unique in academia and having to come up with a new idea to get attention, to get yourself on the radar of people, institutions that have money. So for you to say and read a history and say, yes, this history is correct, that doesn't get on anyone's radar. I'm not going into the intention of people. That's impossible. But we cannot. It's just impossible, impractical, and naive to not be aware that bringing a new idea, contradicting the known history or the tradition that has been passed down in a field such as academia or whatever field you want to talk about, it gets attention. And attention is needed to get you the job. We can't discount that. I think attention, you have to get attention in all ways. The question is, are you getting it righteously or wickedly? So later historians of the West, whom are the most dominant historians of our times because they write the best history books, which is pretty much a shame, but that's what happens when your civilization's in decline. Another civilization rises up. They're the ones who have the time to study history, to write the books, and that's why we're talking about their books. We're not talking about some Islamic historian's books, Muslim historian. Well, they want to play it that Nooruddin, he's a king like any other king. That's how they want. Salahuddin is a king like any other king. They want to put it like that. But even them, this is a good, I like this book. I read it a long time ago. Salahuddin by P.H. Ayyubi. I haven't read it again. I probably may not like it a second time I read it, but who knows. But they cannot deny the personal piety that was on display of these individuals. There is a great amount of evidence showing the personal piety of Nooruddin, how he lived. He was austere. Okay, let's put the map up, Brian. We can put it up now that we have it up. Nooruddin was austere. He was a Zahid. He was a Hanafi, and it is said that the madhab that was promulgated were 3 in his time and in his city. Take a seat, Habib, you could join the podcast. And Yahya too, take a seat, because Yahya just came back from Jamaat and he'll tell us about it. Youth Jamaat. Yeah, Youth Jamaat. If people don't know what Jamaat is, it's mainly essentially when they go for tabligh. Okay. It's basically a nice trip for the youth. Could you see why? Get the AC to pump out cold air. It's just Is it so hot? That's why the internet's slow. Everything's slow. By the way, we got a major scorcher today. How hot was it outside? Like 92? Huh?
Yeah, yesterday too.
It should be getting cold. It's so hot that the machine can't work. It's too hard. The internet's slow. Nothing's working. All the grass everywhere, like some of our tenants here in the house, they don't work. They're grass cutters. There's no work. Everyone's grass is dead. Right? So, when you look at what Nooruddin, how he lived, the poetry is literature that's there. You can't invent. It wasn't invented later. It was there. It's clearly poetry praising him as a man of piety. For us as Muslims, this is the key. Because our main belief is that our success comes from taqwa, from sakina. Yet at the same time, you have to have some gamesmanship. You have to be a gangster in your profession. And Nooruddin was. And they used that to try to show that he's just a man of dunya like everybody else. But no, you have to be somebody who strengthens. If you're a king, you don't just spread the deen. You solidify your own power. You have to. Or else you won't survive. So we take it that when he does that, and he does solidify his own power, and sometimes he is attacking other Muslims. But when he attacks other Muslims, it's always with a green light from a faqih that this is for the benefit of the ummah. Like what, for example? Damascus was tied with Jerusalem. Jerusalem is who? The Crusaders. And at this point, Jerusalem was ruled by Baldwin III. Okay? Hey, look up if there's a picture of Baldwin III. Okay. Now, Baldwin III He's a great king. He's an excellent king. And when your people have an excellent king, you know that Allah has willed stability for you. When a fool takes over, which is going to happen later on, a fool takes over, then you know that Allah has willed the demise. What's the proof of that? The Quran says, وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا بِقَرْيَةٍ أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَفِيهَا. If we have a specific will, in other words, to bring down a nation, we bring up the fools. Mutrafiya means the people who care about the details or about the superficials, the atraf, the edges, or the people who are on the edge of intellect as opposed to on the core of things. Amarna mutrafiya, fafasaqu fiha. They mess it up. Fafasaqu fiha means they destroy everything. They ruin everything. That's why you look at a guy like Putin, say what you want about his morals. Say whatever you want. You want to call him evil, I'm fine with all that. You cannot say he's incompetent. Nobody could rule these oligarchs for how many years is he ruling? 20 years now? Nobody could rule for that long and be incompetent. He's not a stupid guy, which is why Russia is something to be reckoned with. Right? So Nooruddin, his eye is on Damascus, but he does not break any trusts. And he is at one point attacked. He's attacked by a new wave of crusaders. He has no choice but to call upon Nooruddin. Nooruddin comes from Aleppo and he saves Damascus. And then he doesn't even spend the night because he wants to show him, I have no ill will towards you. So he leaves. That king dies of Damascus. These are all like little kings. The king dies of Damascus. Right? Then Nooruddin realizes a weak king comes in. There's no pact between that king. So back in the old days, you had pacts between kings, not between nations. So there's no pact on dishonor. He realized, if we leave this king there, the Crusaders are going to take it. So he comes in and he takes Damascus. Once he takes Damascus, that's where everything turns. Because Damascus is a powerful city. And by the way, another sign of the barakah of this conquest of Damascus. It's a conquest. It's a political takeover. That doesn't mean it's not blessed. People imagine piety to be like being a lamb, like this Christian version of piety. You're never political. You're just a lamb. You're like a Quaker. All that stuff. All right? The Quakers could be Quakers because no one tried to conquer Pennsylvania. Nobody wants it. Right? Back in the Quakers, what's his name? Who was it, the founder of Pennsylvania? Right? William Penn. All right, Bill Penn. He's a Quaker, right? No violence, everything should be nice and good. I love it. It's wonderful. Until someone tries to conquer you, right? Then let's talk. Let's see your philosophy then. All right? So you could be all peaceful when you're way out there in the middle of nowhere and nobody cares about your country. But as soon as people care, you can't be this Quaker, all peace-loving, all right? So it is a conquest, but it's blessed. And the sign of it's being blessed is that the elite and the common call for Nooruddin to come and take over. When they realize the new king is weak, he can't do anything. We don't trust him. We trust you. And in the Sharia, what is rule? Rule for us is by a king who is asked to rule. That's the correct and the pure. That's the purest form of rule, is when the elite and the common, but most importantly the elite, who speak for the common, the interests of the common folk, the heads of the tribes and the heads of the different groups. If there are no tribes, then there are interest groups. There are groups, right? Demographics. They call for you to lead. And they put the burden of leading on your shoulder. And once that happens, that's the blessed rule. And Nooruddin's rule was extremely blessed. He filled the masajid with classes. And the biggest theme was jihad. Just every day, non-stop talk about war against the Crusaders. Taking back one city at a time. And Nooruddin's gets you the Nooruddin's Smitus, his battles are many. Nooruddin's battles are many. Let's take a look at some of them. Now, here's this one of the signs that even the non-Muslims had to recognize the nobility of these rulers. When Baldwin III died, okay, this is a Crusader enemy, right? Everyone said, Nooruddin, this is your chance. He said no. He said, when a prince like that, who knows how to lead his people, competent in all facets of the field of monarchy and governance and rule, when he dies, we give them respect. I'm not going to take advantage. Why? Because he was not like some of the other rulers that came who were fools. There were rulers who were fools who deserved what they got. But Baldwin III, and from his lineage, from Baldwin III, was somebody that he respected. And he refused to attack Jerusalem after Baldwin III. He respected them. Because when you're a king, when you're a gangster, and you meet another gangster, right? When I say gangster, I mean you're living in a world of chaos, right? There's no order in the old world. If you have power, you attack. You think there's order now? We imagine, yeah, there's red lights, green lights. That's for us. We imagine that. But in the grand scheme of global politics, there's no order, right? You have a chance to take something, you have to take it. Okay? So he respected them. And he let them bring on the next king. Okay? And there was nothing left in Syria, though. So he didn't have the power to go to Jerusalem. The eye of Nooruddin was to completely corner the Crusaders. How do you do that? Syria is completely under his control now. Now, in the map, under the green Kingdom of Jerusalem, go a little southwest, that's Egypt. Egypt is ruled by the Fatimid Shia. Those yellow, blue, red, and green countries there are the Crusaders from Europe, the French, basically. You see how long the French hatred of Islam comes from? From 1100s, right? So grandfather from grandson, for over a millennium, they've been hating Islam. Okay, so you wonder where that hatred comes from. It's part of their history. Most of what do we call in Arabic? What do we call a foreigner? Call him a Frangi, which means Frenchman, because these were the Crusaders were mostly French, right? And the papacy was in France, so that's why basically the Crusader history, the history of between Muslims and Europeans, is essentially the French more than anybody else. That's why their hatred for Islam is run so deep. Now, even as atheists, they've sloughed off Christianity, but they've kept the hatred of Islam. Well, they hate all religions now. So, if he can get Egypt, that's the key. If he can conquer Egypt, then he could have two major armies and completely jam Jerusalem from both sides. Makes sense, right? Jam them from both sides. And this happens. It happens when another crusade comes along, and these crusaders, what do? Well, they're not dumb either. They realize, we're in trouble. If Nooruddin gets his hands on Egypt, we're in big trouble. So what do they have to do? They got to take Egypt first. So they try to take Egypt first. Okay? And when the crusaders come to take Egypt, the Fatimid king reluctantly, he phones Nooruddin. I don't know how they used to do it back in the old days. Send a horseman, right? Send a pigeon. Send a falcon, right? Fire a smokestack. But they send an emissary over to Nooruddin and reluctantly ask for help. So Nooruddin sends who? His brother. Okay. And he sends the assistant to his brother is whom at this time? Salahuddin. Now keep in mind, Yusuf ibn Ayyub, Salahuddin, he's just a soldier like anybody else. But he's a competent soldier. And he has a position of privilege with the king, with Nooruddin, because Nooruddin inherited the loyalty of his father. Remember, Salahuddin's father, Ayyub, is owed a favor by Ahmed. So Nooruddin's dad was basically running for his life. Salahuddin's dad took him into Crete, Iraq. So he owes him a favor for life. So he set him up nice and cushy in Syria. And Salahuddin grows up there, and they're family friends. So Nooruddin takes him in as he's a soldier like any other soldier, and a general, and he rises up the ranks, but he has a special spot. So Nooruddin's brother now is not exactly Mr. Dean, right? He's blind in one eye, he's corpulent, he's foul-mouthed, right? But he's competent. And Nooruddin sends him and Salahuddin to Egypt to push back the Crusaders. And the mission is, we're not at war with the Fatimids, push back the Crusaders and come right back. That's the goal. And he does an amazing job. And I had a video on it in the past, but I took it down. You could literally make a movie. Honestly, this whole period, this whole century is Game of Thrones. But this one attack where he comes in with a small troop and he's trapped in a certain area, the brother of Nooruddin, Shirkuh, his name is, Shirkuh. And he goes down to South Egypt and he attacks the capital. So he's a guy who's very vulnerable against the Crusaders. The Crusaders are making a siege on the capital. When he comes in, he's stopped, right? So in order to busy them, he's able to get a small contingent of his soldiers down to the southern Egypt, recruit some Sunnis from there, go up, attack the capital, right, and distract the Crusaders. He's a brilliant warrior. And point being, he gets the job done. Now, when he gets the job done and he vanquishes the Crusaders leave. Now, what do you think they do after war, after an operation like that is over? They have to rest a little bit. As they're resting, the Fatimid king invites him over, right? They come to the palace, right? They're eating. Shirkuh, like his brother, like his father, he's got an eye. He's resourceful. He's looking around. He's looking around at the palace. It's not well kept. He's looking around at the soldiers. This is not a scary army. He's looking at the king. He's like 14 years old. And immediately on the spot decides, let's take it. This was not his order, but he knew that this is a great opportunity. So he takes it. He goes back, rallies his troops. They surround the castle of the king, of the Fatimid king, and they take over. That was it. Nothing. There was no war, nothing. Very quickly took over. And he's so happy because this was Nooruddin's goal. And if you have Syria and you have Egypt, you will have. What happened in the 60s when Israel came about? Syria and Egypt realized if we can make a pact together, we can sandwich Israel and we could take over. And they made a pact, but they were not upon deen. And I heard lectures, and I met some people who were in that army, on the Egypt side. And I heard them saying that the night before the army, the Egyptian soldiers were passing around pornographic magazines. So he knew we're not winning this war. And they didn't, right? The Egyptians didn't. And the Syrian pact was not something based upon taqwa the way Nooruddin established it. So Allah does not give Muslims victory if they're not on taqwa, right? Unless it's paving the way for something else. So, and victory against the kuffar, we should say. Victory against one another, okay, maybe that's something else. But when he takes over, he's beside himself. He can't believe it. So he sends a letter to Nooruddin. Egypt is ours. They can't believe it. They're like, the goal has been, we arrived at it, right? Now, Shirkuh, we said, is not Mr. Piety. What does he do? There are 2 castles in Egypt. He alternates partying One night here, one night there. One night here, one night there. For 2 weeks, he parties. He ate so much that the doctors say his stomach burst from how much he ate. And he died. Right then and there. So what does he do when he died? He says to his number 2, Yusuf, who is Salahuddin, hey, you, most loyal person to Nooruddin that we know, we're family friends, guess what? You're king. You're king of Egypt. It's like, what? Now, immediately, who comes down? Immediately, his dad. Now, remember who his dad is. His dad's loyalty is to himself. His dad saved Nooruddin's dad, knowing this is a political bargaining chip I can use later on. And that allowed, when Ahmad-ad-Din became successful, then Nooruddin became successful, for him to have a nice posh position in the monarchy. Now his son has Egypt. You think a 50-year veteran of politics is just going to tell him, follow orders and submit Egypt back to Nooruddin? He says, no. This is our turn now. We're kings. So Yusuf, Salahuddin, is young at this point, very young, and he doesn't really have a plan. His father comes in and tutors him. And he says, you write a letter immediately to Nooruddin. And you tell him everything he wants to hear. And you give him the most polite, you address him in the most polite fashion possible. But you don't give up an inch. You do not give up 1 inch of Egypt, and you don't go back. And every time he calls you back, and every time he gives you an order, you reply immediately with the most polite reply possible. But you don't give him an inch and start consolidating this kingdom. We, the Ayyubids, it's our turn now. And he never gives Egypt to Nooruddin. So, the Zengi Empire, finally, the moment it reaches its climax, it doesn't get it, right? On top of that, what happens? So, Yusuf, now, he's ruling Egypt. He's consolidating Egypt. He's traveling around, okay? The monopoly board of the old world. Consolidating, strengthening, pushing off enemies. Nooruddin says, now it's time. Meet me in Jerusalem. Let's fight. He ignores him. And he avoids Nooruddin. How long can I keep avoiding him? This is not like practical or sustainable. And yet Allah Ta'ala comes with the verdict. You know what happens? Nooruddin gets a virus in his throat, severe tonsillitis, and he dies young. That's it. And who are his sons? He only has like a 15-year-old son. So what does Salahuddin do? His father walks in. You write the longest ode of respect and honor, and then you go and you conquer Syria. And they go in, and the people of Syria see the troops of Salahuddin. They know him. He's one of their own. So they don't view this as a nasty takeover. And Salahuddin takes over Syria. Okay. And that's how Salahuddin and Nooruddin, Nooruddin's vision of a Syria-Egypt pact to put the Crusaders between 2 pincers like this, ends up being the destiny of the Ayyubids, of Salahuddin. Now, was there a selfish motive by the father of Salahuddin? Was the father of Salahuddin a corrupt tyrant? No. Was he a foxy politician? Yes. He was a fox. There's no doubt about it. And he saw a chance for his family to have a place in history, and they got it, right? And so a pious person like Salahuddin, well, at the same time, I guess you have to listen to your father, right? So Allah has forced him almost. It's almost as if Allah jammed him. Well, you got to listen to your father, right? Obey your father. So it came to Salahuddin in that respect. So that's the summary of Nooruddin, Salahuddin, If we want to talk about Deen and Aqidah, then both of them were extremely pious. They were Ash'a'ira. They promoted the Ash'ari school of Aqidah. That was a big portion of it. There's something called Al-Aqidah Salahiyya. Why is that? It's because there was a lot of Shiism in the air at the time. A lot of Shiism. Right? And so they had to combat that. How else did Salahuddin combat this? He said, we need the strength of all the madhabs. And he's one of the first, if not the first. I don't think Nizam al-Mulk did this in the Ghazali's time. He was one of the first to call upon the leaders of all the madhabs and have them all teach in one mosque. In what's called a 4-Iwan mosque, which is basically, imagine a big courtyard and then a huge nave, a roofed area, like etched in. Imagine like a plus sign, essentially. The middle of the plus sign is open air with a big fountain for wudu, and each of the legs of the plus sign, the limbs, is like a domed, hollow area, and there, each madhab has one, and each madhab is assigned to leadership from their own that manages it. Why? Because we need all hands on deck to combat the Shiism that's in the air. Shiism was a thing of the Arabs in the past. It wasn't a Persian thing, right? It became Persian later, but it was an Arab issue. They were fighting within. And so the Fatimids were Arabs who had established themselves in Egypt, and Salahuddin in order to combat this. So he did have a keen eye on theology. Salahuddin, he believed that victory is by ibadah and sakina. One of the proofs of that is that he assigned a sheikh to remind the people of piety. All he was supposed to do is worship Allah day and night and give a couple speeches to the troops. Every troops are divided into companies. Every company had one. Right? And the sheikh of all of them, right, was Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama at that time was the sheikh who was assigned, one of the assignments he had was to be in the army. Give lectures on the laws of fiqh related to war and conquest so that our soldiers can obey them, right? And that was his job for a period of time. The great Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi. All right. So that's the idea and the concept of how Allah's will. Nooruddin came up with something. All right. Yet at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a different plan, and Syria and Egypt, as the jam of the Crusaders, was the fate and the destiny of Salahuddin Yusuf ibn Ayyub ibn Shadi. And that led to the Ayyubid dynasty, okay, which has its own history, and in the future lessons, inshallah, we'll talk about the basic history of how Salahuddin conquers the Crusaders. Right?